So it's recording now. Okay. Welcome back to the Plant Power.
This is gonna be this like we haven't been here for the past 2 hours. No.
Oh my god.
This whole thing is gonna be a meme.
Welcome back to the Plant Powered podcast. I've got a very exciting interview again today. It's the last interview I'll be doing for a while. So I've got Eden Jade on to talk about all things plant-based bodybuilding because it's something we're both interested in, and I've done WBFF and I'm training for my next show, and she's done IFBB, so we can talk about both of the federations and all things bikini prep and how to do it on a plant-based diet. So did you want to do a little introduction to yourself as well?
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me on your podcast, firstly.
Yeah, that's all right.
We got there. Yeah, hi everyone who is listening as well. Obviously my name's Eden, and yeah, Cass and I have very similar interests in many ways. I studied sports science or sport and recreation, so that's what I did at university. And since then, my coaching has it's scaled and it's kind of morphed into I call myself a fitness and mindset coach now. One, because I guess, having the gift of the gab does help. So just having chats, having real open, honest, raw conversations with people. I like to think that is definitely a really good type of therapy for a lot of people, is just having a conversation. And then we dive into more of the psychology side of things with clients, and kind of just supporting them through their journey, their mental health and their fitness journey. So that's what I do for coaching. And yeah, obviously I'm also an athlete, a bikini bodybuilding athlete, and I've done that for the past 4 years, I think. And like you said, I've my first federation was NABA, so that's a natural federation, and then I did compete in IFBB at a natural nationals after that, so that was IFBB, and then I have also competed twice or 3 times in ICN, so that's another natural competition as well.
The first question is, we can both kind of answer, but in your words, how would you describe the difference between all the different federations?
Good question. I think if I could explain what makes them all different in one word, it's culture. I think culture is huge. And when it comes to competing is an amazing, exciting thing. And I definitely know that it's not for everyone. Because I'm not gonna sit here and be like, hey, I love to say it, everyone could compete, but you can compete if you really have that willpower and that mental strength to actually be a little bit more disciplined in the sport. But then again, it does depend on your goals and what you want out of it personally. But I think choosing a federation that is suited to you, your values, your morals, your goals, that's so freaking important. Because if you do want to keep competing, then it does make the difference, I think. The experience that you have in a show will make the difference between whether you want to keep competing or not. And I think, do you think that would be the same? Have you competed in WBFF once or twice?
Yeah, only one. So my next show is in October.
Gotcha. And WBFF again, which is a federation, that I haven't done. And so I think NABA was a really, really good place to start. So for those who are in New Zealand, those who are thinking of competing, I think NABA is a great way to just step on stage, build a base of confidence. And I think that the demographic in that sport is slightly older as well. There's definitely a range of ages, but I think that you'll find that the ladies and the men who have been competing for a lot longer and they now just love to have freaking fun with it, they'll jump into a federation like NABA because it's been around for a while. And then I think I wanted to try an IFBB. So what I found with IFBB, like obviously it's internationally renowned for being a very highly competitive federation, I think. And so I wanted more competition because I am quite internally like competitive in myself, and I'm not competing against anyone else. And the reason why I compete is to see if I can, and it might be the same for you, like to see if I can improve my physique from the last time that I stepped on stage. So I was like, okay, I'm going to try something different. And it was a national, I think because of COVID, we got straight into, you could qualify straight away into the natural nationals without doing a regionals. And yeah, so that was a huge, that was like, I'd had a coach for the NABA show for my first show. And then that actually, before the natural nationals is when I went strict vegan, like full vegan, full plant based, to prove that I could compete in that show, and build muscle because I'm a hard gainer, like I'm an ectomorph. Um, very long, lanky limbs, and sometimes we do find it more difficult to pack on weight or show muscle. So I was like, fuck, I'm combining my genetics, my body type, with a diet that people technically say, you know, like, oh, good luck putting on some fucking muscle. Because you're not eating meat, you're not consuming dairy products, blah, blah, blah. I was like, you know what, fuck it. I'm still not doing it to prove it to you, but I'm genuinely curious myself. So a lot of stuff that I do as an athlete and as a coach is out of curiosity because I think it makes things fun. Um, so I had to, in order to be able to teach it or coach it or share my experiences, I'm like, I got to do it myself. So I went strict vegan for that prep, and I won my bikini division, and that was the most muscle that I had ever held at that stage as well. So there you go.
Hmm. Yeah, I didn't even know you won, so that's so good.
But yeah, I think it was amazing.
Mm.
Yes, I've won gold in every single division and show that I've competed in. And then my last one, I got a gold and a few
Wow.
silvers, in a sports division as well, which was really
Mm.
fun. But that's just out of, and I've coached myself for the past 2 years. So I think you really, really learn the most when you're the one coaching yourself and you're the one listening to your body. And you, as a holistic coach, you're probably such a fan of just really being mindful of what you're feeling when you eat and consume certain things. Yeah.
Yeah, honoring your cravings and seeing how you feel after meal times and how much energy you have for your workouts and stuff. So, yeah. And I just wanted to say, I think, I don't know 100%, but the Australian equivalent of NABA is probably ICN, which stands for I Compete Natural. I don't know how different the shows are, but that's probably the same kind of thing. And then the way I would describe WBFF is that stands for World Beauty Fitness Fashion. And that's the one I went straight into because I used to just look at all these women I looked up to on Instagram and they were doing that big as one. But the main difference with WBFF is that it's so glam and the bikinis are like so heavy and full of all these diamonds and sparkles. It's like a queen's bikini. So I just jumped straight into the biggest show there is because that's the only one I'm interested in. So yeah, I've got my second show in October. Yeah. So all of them have different judging criteria and different poses. Like with the IFBB, the posing's a bit different to WBFF. Like with the one I'm doing, you've got more freedom to pose kind of how you like instead of, I don't know, kind of make the routine your own to show off your best features and stuff. So there's a little bit more freedom around that. And you also get judged on having the best gown or even like matching the embellishments to your shoes to match your bikini. And it's like a bit more fashion orientated as well. So I kind of like that side because it's nice to get dressed up and feel girly and stuff because I usually just wear gym clothes every day. So it's nice to get all glammed up and stuff. So that's probably the main differences between the shows. And finding what kind of thing you're after, the kind of size competition that you want to go to? And also, if you win, like, what do you get out of that? Because if you win IFBB, does that lead to the Olympia show?
So I think in New Zealand, well, technically you actually have to. So now that you say that, to qualify technically for like a pro card. So in bodybuilding, in order to earn, for the listeners, I guess who don't know, in
Mm.
order to make money from the sport, you have to become a pro athlete. So yeah, and that's where the real money comes in. Otherwise, the sport does get expensive, and it's like anything. Like you're paying to compete in the hopes, basically, or with the desire that you could become a pro athlete and make some, earn an income off it. Yeah, so I think IFBB, that can go into like in an international context, that if once you have your pro card, you can. I'm not sure if you just have to qualify, or I'm not sure if they actually like scout. I don't know if that's a thing, but basically you would have to qualify within like a top three or top five or whatever, and then that can go towards Mr. Olympia, which is international. That's huge. Is that Joe Wider's? There's Mr. Olympia, and there's also another huge one. But
Mm.
basically, it's a very IFBB, is a very traditional, takes a very traditional stance on bodybuilding. You've got your OG, like you've got your bikini, which is all about femininity. It's about having a sculpted body, but muscular balance and symmetry is like very much so what they look for, and that's in all the categories. But for bikini, it's like you want capped shoulders, so wide broad capped shoulders. And basically, if you don't have capped shoulders or glutes and tie-ins, which is the line underneath your hamstrings up into your glutes, if you don't have that and you don't have nice glutes as a bikini model in IFBB, then it's kind of like good luck, um, according to the judges' criteria. Um, and it's interesting because between ICN and IFBB, even so, bikini IFBB likes to have, like, the criteria is conditioned. It's lean, like very very lean. You can look a little bit more harsh, I guess, or solid. Whereas when it comes to ICN, it's like if you have that, if you're that lean, they don't like it. Um, and I think that was almost similar to how they had the criteria. It may still be the criteria for WBFF, but they like you to come in with a slightly softer look with the outline of your abs, but you cannot have a six pack.
For WBFF?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's huge. Like the bodybuilding industry is huge. I guess, yeah. If you want to, you have the opportunity to grow in the sport. Um, it's just, yeah, it's completely different. If you want it for that competitiveness of it, um, without the glitz and the
Mm.
glam, because like you were saying, Cass, with your heels and
Mm.
with your bikini, how expensive would your
Mm.
how expensive does that get?
Yeah, so the brand new ones are about 1,200 and more if you get it designed specifically for you. But I just bought a secondhand one off Marketplace for mine. So that was 500, I think. And I just had to get a couple of alterations because the girl before me had huge fake boobs. So the top wasn't actually fitted to me. So I had to stuff it a lot. Um, so this year I've been looking at bikinis to buy secondhand, and I've got this now that I've competed once. I know what's going to make me pop on stage, and I know what's going to look good. So I've been trying to find something secondhand, but I think I am going to go all out this year and get it like made for me. So that wasn't the plan, but I feel like I'm in a really good place with my body and stuff, and I feel like I've got a good show now, like a good chance at the show now that I know what to expect, and with how consistent I've been and stuff. So I think this year I'm going to get it made just for me, and yeah, I'm very excited. So yeah, it's pretty expensive. Mm.
Oh, it's people are like, like, just why?
Mm.
People are honestly like, why do you do it?
Yeah.
But it's, and like you said, like it's a thing. It's a, for you, you want to feel glammed up. You want to feel like a boss ass bitch on stage. And like, I think it's such a confidence thing. And if you don't already feel like you have that extreme confidence, like guaranteed when you throughout the journey you do start to grow it, and then once you hit that stage, it's such the adrenaline and the endorphins and the dopamine and everything that is released, like when you're up on stage and you're like strutting and flaunting everything that you have worked so hard for, like for months. It's just the best feeling in the world, eh? It's so good. And you're looking so, your physique right now is fucking amazing, by the way.
Thank you. I feel like I'm more bulk than ever, but both times I've competed is because I've been through a breakup, and it was with the same breakup from the same person. So last year, like I've talked about this before, but
Really?
yeah, last April, we broke up end of February, and I did a 6-week prep, and it just helped me start eating better again, start going for walks, because I was just crying in bed, calling the counselors every day, super depressed, and just not eating and stuff. And I put together another before and after photo. I'll put it on the screen when I edit it, and I actually didn't realize how much weight I lost. Plus, the year before, during 2020, I basically had the whole year off weight training because of COVID, because the gyms were closed. So I basically had a year off, and then weeks and weeks in bed doing nothing because I was so depressed. And then just decided to sign up for the show with 6 weeks to go, to find a bikini, start to prep, start to eat better, try to build a little bit of muscle. And then hopping on the stage and doing that show that I'd always seen the woman like that I look up to on Instagram. I was like, holy crap, that is amazing for your confidence. And then I got third, and I'd never stepped on stage before, so that was amazing. And then this year, like we spent 9 months apart last year, and then I thought that it would be better this time, and I think it lasted maybe 2 months, and then we broke up again end of February, so it was like a 1-year loop, which is crazy to have the same lesson. So it's almost August now. It's July now when we're recording this, and I'm going to compete in October. So it'll be probably a year and a half in between them. So that's enough time to go through a bulk period. And when I'm at the gym, I just think about all the people I'm angry at, all the people who I don't like, or people who have fucked me over, or I don't know, I just get really angry and like really release my emotions, and I just keep getting more bulked up, and I'm feeling probably better than I ever have in my whole entire life.
That's the best story ever. Are you okay?
Yeah. Well, I just put on, obviously, I listen to dubstep, and I just put on like really loud dubstep. And then even the guys at the gym who are just minding their own business, working out, I just try to get musclier than them when I'm there.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's almost like, yeah, because it could go either way. Like, you know, you could be in that like, oh, you know, woe is me, like the world is turning against me kind of thing. Go to the gym. Like I've been at the gym before and felt like shit, and I've just cried, and sometimes you want to go home. But like, and yeah, you're gonna have those days. But if you're like thriving off of the opposite because you want to fucking like think about when you're like, when you're shoulder pressing or something, just think like that someone's face is above you. No, I'm not that sad, but like I see how you can like bring that.
Yeah.
You can like bring that anger into it to actually like give you the fucking the pump for it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is a tactic that not many people talk about. So that's interesting. Thank you for sharing that.
I probably think it's unhealthy to think about that stuff at the gym, but it does feel like a release, and it's a good way to get your emotions out. So I think it's helping a lot, and it's obviously working because I'm working out really hard, kind of thing. But yeah, I think it's always best, like you can look up to the people online who have your ideal physique or whatever, but you should always be trying to improve from your previous physique. So I'm trying to beat my physique when I lived in New Zealand. That's when I was the most lean. And I think I already have, and I've already beat last year's physique on show day. I think I'm looking better now than on show day, and I haven't started the cut yet. So it's definitely going good. But competing really helps with having a goal as well to help stay consistent.
So yeah, it's
Yeah.
exciting. Oh, hugely. I think, yeah. And like you said, like going back to what you were just talking about before, like if it's a release for you, like in a healthy way, and it's like, and within, it's like internal.
Mhm.
It's not like, as long as it's not affecting anyone else, and as long
Mm.
as you're not like coming out of the gym like, in a worse state
Mm.
than when you went in there,
Yeah.
and it's helping you, like for you, you're processing it. Otherwise, you may not actually bring it to the surface and get past it anyway.
Mm.
Um, and so it's actually, but it's crazy that now, but you're not going to do it again, are you? You're going to do the same loop?
No.
you know,
No.
yeah, maybe third time,
No,
go third lap.
it had been
No.
already like 10 times, but but that's why I moved away so I can start my new
Yeah,
one.
okay. Wait. Yeah, exactly. But then until you understand that, like, that doesn't matter. They don't matter
Yeah.
anymore. They don't matter. You're doing this for you.
Yeah.
You're thriving,
Mhm.
and you can tell. And it's just like, if you keep bettering your physique, like you already have, like you haven't even started your cut, and the fact that you
Mm.
see that you're in a better physique or point at this point in prep than last time,
Mm.
like that's freaking exciting, because that's what it's all about. Like when you're off season and you already look more conditioned, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, okay,
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think it's important if you're doing a show or a prep as well to always look at it in a way to reward yourself, not punish yourself. Like if you've come out of a breakup or a bad time in your life and you decide to compete, it's not to starve yourself because you don't deserve food. And you, like, lots of the girls actually get bulimia and like really bad eating disorders and stuff. But I viewed it as a way to start eating more salads and eat more nourishing meals and just be more serious about meal times and get outside to walk more and lift heavier weights because it feels good. It's not a way to punish yourself. It should be viewed and done in a positive way because you love your body, not hate it, kind of thing. So I think that's the most important factor so that it doesn't turn unhealthy.
That's very important. That's
Mm.
so true. And I think that because bodybuilding does bring on, I think that every athlete can relate to feelings of body dysmorphia in some way. So many athletes would get it a lot worse, I guess, than other athletes, and it depends how like strong-minded you are.
Mm.
But um, yeah, like the first year that I tried to prep with the wrong coaches, and I didn't really know anything about it. This was like 5 years ago, and I've talked a little bit about it before, but it just entirely like fucked me over. I thought I was doing the right thing, and then I wasn't losing the weight because I was getting stressed and I was holding on to the weight. And it was doing all
Mm.
the reverse and the opposite things that it
Mm.
was actually meant to. And I thought that I was, I had like, it was like 6 weeks to go, 5 weeks to go. Then I was like 4 weeks out, and I hadn't budged in weight or anything. And it's not like I wasn't big, but I knew mentally I was screwed, and then nothing was changing physically. So then it affects your mental state even more, because you are putting yourself in a state of, in a deficit for
Mm.
a certain period of time that's inevitable. Um, so when your gut health it relates directly to your mental health as well. So when you're lacking things and nutrients that you usually would need to function efficiently, like you're going to start to go a little bit backwards. So everything for me was just so imbalanced in that first year of me prepping, and I started to view my body as like, I'm not good enough, it's not
Mm.
okay, blah blah blah. But that was because of the fact that I had veered off of my goal. Why I initially started was because I wanted to prove myself that I could, get stronger and get to a physique that I thought initially, like wasn't obtainable. But then I was like, you know what, I'm going to prove myself wrong, and I'm going to have fun with it. And it was a fun element that I started to lack. um, and I pulled out of that show because I saw myself that I was spiraling into depression and anxiety. And
Mm.
um, but then the following year, like you said, you're like, you want to do this because you love your body, not hate it. And so that's one of the reasons why I actually decided to compete again the following year. And everyone's like, but you fucking hated it the
Mm.
first time. And I'm like, no, I didn't hate it. It was the fact that I had been guided into doing something maybe the wrong way
Mm.
that made me lose track of my goals and who I was as a person.
Mm.
So I know who I am as a person and I know why I'm doing it. And so I was like, I'll give it another go, but I'll get another coach. So I did that, loved it, coached myself for another 2 years,
Mm.
then just did my last ones. And I think the more that you do it, so the first few shows, I struggled with that, mainly post comp. Not so much during, but post comp, I struggled for my first two shows to put on weight afterwards.
Mm.
And that's why now, coming out of this show, it's different because I've learned that I still have to track foods for quite a while
Mm.
post show. Not tracking my fitness pal, but just know how many calories I am having. So I put on weight.
Mm.
So because it can be like you're in a deficit, but now I'm like, I want to keep going and doing this without the goal of another competition now because I want to put on weight. So that's why I'm still being mindful of what I'm eating. But it doesn't always have to be about weight
Mm.
loss and the aesthetic side of things. It goes, it's in season, off season. But
Mm.
I think I've learned to find the balance in that now and why it's so important to just take the off season part just as seriously as the in season is so
Mm.
important.
Mm. Yeah. I wanted to quickly touch on one thing before the second question, but I think it's also important to find the right coach as well because some coaches, like a lot of the girls who are at the top ranks, they've got male coaches who I think have quite a masculine approach, and that's what they like because they just like it to be strict, black and white, no veering outside of the program. No, I don't know, like do it, there's no other option to not do it basically. You can't skip a workout or anything. And one of the girls who I met backstage said she liked prepping for the show and she was in amazing shape, but she said she lost her period and then her coach said, yeah, well, do you want to win or not, and just had no care for her feminine health or anything, and they just can be quite strict. And I'm a person who doesn't like rules, doesn't like being told what to do. I do all my own food and stuff. Like I like guidance around, I'm still not tracking calories, but I like guidance around how many calories to eat or how to prioritize protein, but I don't like being told even what to eat. I just like having maybe ideas, but I do all my own food. So my coach is quite, I'd say she's quite lenient, but then when she does see me slacking off, she just had to like ground me for the first time the other day because she would give me exercises. And if I didn't like an exercise, I'd just swap it out because it was too hard. So she's like, Cassie, from now on, you can't swap out the exercises you don't like. So I'm like, oh, okay. But I think having that style of coach works for me because I hate rigidness and I like more feminine energy and stuff. So definitely the coach that you choose can have a huge impact on how your prep goes for the show.
So,
Mm.
and that's amazing to hear that you're like so flexible with it that you're still not tracking calories
I should
because
be.
like that's incredible because you're still making so much progress. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, what does your coach think about that?
I think when it starts to come to crunch time, like I want to start tracking now just to know how much I'm eating. But I know I eat around 1,800 to 2,000 at normal maintenance, maybe 2,200 if it's like a hard leg day. So I know it's always within that range, but like it would be good to start like tracking for a protein goal and stuff and just to know how much I'm having so we know how much to cut by. But I just don't like it. Like if I make a big recipe and I don't know how many serves is in there, or I just eat out or eat something during the day and then it's been like weeks and I'm like, oh my God, I'm still not tracking. So I've got lots of resistance around it, but I need to start
Uh,
doing.
I can,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. You've still got a fair amount of time
Yeah.
to go. So like but like you with the discipline that you do have, like the self discipline, you when it's crunch time and you understand that you obviously want to start fine tuning
Mm.
because if you want the best physique and to beat the one that you've had last time, obviously you know that you've got to make those small adjustments that you didn't do last time. So
Mm.
you will, but I don't think that I think it's such an amazing approach that you have because of the fact that when you don't track, it just makes you so much more aware of the processes and of the emotions and like how you're actually feeling when you eat certain things in like certain amounts.
Yeah.
Whereas like when you start tracking, you start like, I used to remember I would get so, yeah, if it says 12 grams of peanut butter, you have 12 grams of peanut butter. Like, but you're just, and you're just so like fixated on and I used to like be like that for a few of my preps, that I thought that was going to change everything. But, if I had 15 grams, I'm like, oh my gosh, I've got to make sure to have this amount of calories less in my next meal. Whereas in reality, as you would have discovered through your like process as well, is that if you have like a different amount of calories slightly one day, then it really, you've got to look at the weekly total calories and an estimate of how much you're actually having over an entire week, right? Not just day to day, not just meal to meal. And that's kind of where like refeed things come in as well, or like macro cycling or calorie cycling, because at the end of the day you just want to hit your macro targets for the week, but a lot of people just find it easier to break it down day by day. But going back to what you were saying about the coach anyway, it's so freaking vital to find someone that does understand how you operate best, because of the fact that when you were saying some girls prefer coaches that are like males, and they do, whether they're female or male, like having that
Yeah.
masculine energy where it's like, it's so like you do this and this and this and it's this way or the highway.
Yeah.
It can be so detrimental to the athlete's health. My I haven't talked about this yet. I'm happy to open up about some of the things to do with my last prep on this, interview, because I think it's very relevant and it's super important. But yeah, my last prep, it was up and down with coaches. I actually got a new coach this time where I've prepped myself for the past 2 years, but I invested a lot of time into my clients this year. And we were doing the same show, so that was fun. And so I was like, okay, I want to get a coach so that I'm still getting the accountability and the guidance that I need. Started started working with this coach, and then basically shit happened. He had, family personal issues going on at the same time, so I didn't receive or hear anything from him for a couple weeks. And I was like, oh, is this what I signed up for? I'm not getting the accountability that I need. So anyway, I dropped that coach, and I was very polite about it. And I said, look, it's just, I'm getting nowhere with this. I'll not settle, but I'll just go back to coaching myself again. And then I coached myself for a few weeks, and I'm like, I'm lacking focus, direction, a bit of motivation, because again, coaching my clients is another story. And then so I was like, okay, there's a coach at my gym, and we had a good chat. He has stepped on a world stage, I'm pretty sure, in his country. And he knows his shit. He's a good freaking coach. But what I will say is that he was not adaptable at all, to be honest. And didn't actually. I felt like I wasn't getting heard as an athlete, and I was being treated like a male physique athlete. And this was for weeks of prep, and it was so I, because I'm obviously like still plant based. I haven't been eating seafood. I haven't been eating meat or whatever. But then he goes, "Would you reintroduce fish back into your diet?" And I was like, you know what? Yeah, I've kind of been craving fish, so why the fuck not? So I went from having no fish, and this is just a small example, but no fish for a few years probably, to fish 3 times a day.
Even
And
I
also
couldn't do that.
3 times a day. And it's plain fish. You're not allowed to use oil. And it's like my flatmates hated me because my flat smelled like shit all the time. Like I just it was not only that, but it was also like egg whites twice a day as well.
Mm.
And I was like, okay. I was like, I said, can I switch the fish out for tofu?
Mm.
Like at least one of the meals. Like my last meal was 200 grams of fish and salad, which I never had the salad because I'm not going to sit there. I'm not one to eat lettuce and like stupid little, I don't really fuck with salad. But so would just eat fish on its own. But then I was like, can I switch it out for some tofu? And it was like, yep. And then it got to maybe like 6 weeks out, and I'm like, I'm still feeling really bloated. I'm like, I know my body doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel normal. My acne was coming back. I had like tartar build up in the back of my teeth. I don't know what relation that has to, because I floss and I brush my teeth a lot. And I care for my like oral hygiene, and I started getting like a real bad bacteria tartar build up behind my front teeth, which was so weird. There was a lot going on, and then when I said I was bloated, he goes, "Oh, are you still having tofu?" And I'm like, "Yeah, once, sometimes twice a day." He said, "No tofu." So then for the last like at least a month, it was just fish and egg whites as my protein source. Um, and my diet literally consisted of fish, egg white. We had the opposite approach: fish, egg whites, and it was freaking expensive.
Yeah.
Holy shit! Um, avo- Avocado, even that was eliminated. And then in the last like 6 weeks, I was only allowed almond butter was my fat source. And then for carbs, I had oats and rice,
Mm.
and that was my whole diet, plus some green beans and green veg,
Mm.
spinach. Um, but my diet compared to yours, complete opposite. You're living a very like, and I believe in flexibility, which
Mm.
is why I really admire your approach, because I'm such a holistic coach
Mm.
myself. Having this prep and doing it this way just reminded me how and why like people get so mentally unwell in the sport when they're so strict and they don't want to do it, but their coach is telling them to.
Mm.
Um, in order to do well. But
Mm.
I don't believe you have to have a diet like that to do well in this sport.
Mm. Yeah. Well, I do have something in the works that is for like plant-based athletes, bodybuilders, gym enthusiasts. So, because yeah, no one knows what to do in the industry. So I'm making a bunch of recipes that like cater towards people like that, but still help you to achieve your physique goals. So that's my project for the second half of the year. So I should launch it. I think it's going to be in like 6 weeks. I'm going to aim to launch it. So yeah. Yeah.
Yay! That makes me happy.
Yeah.
So happy, you have no idea. Because no one does know,
No.
right? There's not enough, no one's pushing it.
No. And especially when people are eating like the same handful of ingredients, chicken, broccoli, rice, or even for you, that was probably a total of 6 to 8 ingredients on repeat. That's the worst thing that we can do for our gut bacteria, which is related to our mood, immunity, our whole digestion, and everything. And then once you start eating other foods back, like introducing other foods back, it's just going to cause a whole host of problems because your gut doesn't know how to digest it anymore. And also like limited micronutrients, like different color veggies and different types of carbs give us different nutrients. So maybe swapping rice to quinoa, then the next week having roast starchy veggies and stuff, and swapping out like your broccoli for a purple cabbage and then like a red capsicum and tomato, and just eating different colors is one of the most basic things we can do for our health. And especially with bodybuilding, it gets really, really strict. So I'm trying to change the way people view it as well. So yeah, exciting stuff.
That is so exciting. It's beautiful. Mum always used to say, like, you've got to eat the rainbow. You've got to eat the rainbow.
Yeah. Okay, we're
It, like, going vegan, you
yeah.
do. Oh, yeah, 40 minutes in.
I was about to say question number 2.
Yeah.
What were you going to
Oh,
say?
this is for the viewers, yeah, for the listeners that didn't know, this is a week-long episode. Extravaganza.
Yeah. What were you going to say?
Anyway. No, I was just gonna say, like, when I first went plant-based and vegan, I was exposed to so many vegetables and so many
Mm.
foods that I had never eaten before, and like different ways of creating meals, which might be in one of your other questions, but like you get really creative with it. And then I went into more of a like, especially in this prep, into such like a, like you said, like 6 ingredient kind of shopping list.
Mm.
Like that was what every meal was the same every single day. Like you, it's just, it's not healthy, it's not good, like you said, for your microbiome, your gut health. And then coming back out of that again, introducing just the same vegetables that I was having before were making me instantly bloated, instantly uncomfortable. But it was more so like the beans, the
Mm.
legumes, all of that stuff. I'd started to learn to process those in a really good way.
Mm.
um, Even the tofu, so the soy in that was just too much for me, and now it's slowly getting better again. But yeah,
Mm.
I can understand that. I'm very excited to see what you launch in the
Yeah.
next 6 weeks or so.
Yeah. So question number 2 is, what are your top tips on building muscle on a top tips on building muscle on a plant-based diet, and how would that differ to a standard Western diet?
Ooh, okay. Top tips to building on a plant-based diet. I think at the look, the thing is, you don't need a track. But I would say, if you are someone that doesn't actually,
Mm.
that is not aware of how much you are consuming, and you think you are, because the thing is, I think a lot of females in particular, we like to underestimate the amount
Mm.
of, and you see it all the time as a coach as well, people underestimate the amount of calories that they have, or they'll
Mm.
think they're eating enough, but really it is nowhere near enough the amount that they would need to get the physique that they want. And I think a lot of females, just because they're content with the meal, they might have a small breakfast, then they're like, oh well, I'm not really hungry,
Mm.
so I don't really need to eat right now. They might have another small meal in the afternoon and then have some dinner. um, but that's because you've taught your body to adapt to eating less.
Mm.
So females underestimate the amount of calories that they have, often because they're scared of putting on weight because of
Mm.
societal beauty standards that comes into it. Um, so I think it's maybe at the beginning, my advice is maybe to just chuck some things, like start to take account into the total calories that might be in a few of your meals, so that you know how much you're actually having, particularly protein. And
Mm.
if you're not one to want to ever track calories, I think at least protein
Mm.
is something very, very important to look
Yeah.
at, because the physique that a lot of females want is that tone sculpted look, and that doesn't just come from weight loss, it's
Mm.
coming from gaining lean muscle. So in order to gain lean muscle, your protein in particular has to be high enough, for you to be able to do so. So I think that my advice, I guess, just a simple way to look at it, and I'm not sure if this is the way that you do it, but take your body weight. This is for your
Mm.
protein daily like target. Take your body weight, and you can grow muscle within the times it by 1.8 to 2.2 grams of protein per body weight.
Mm.
And within that range, that will give you a lower range, and that will give you an upper estimate range
Mm.
of where you can sit within your protein range. And anything above that is obviously, as you adapt to having more protein, you can go above that. If your protein's higher, you may adjust your other macronutrients to become lower if you are, trying to have lesser calories. But I think that it's a good place to start.
Mm.
And I think, as you know, like when you eliminate something, you must replace it with
Mm.
something. Um, e- e.g., when I removed meat entirely out of my diet, that was where a huge amount of my protein was coming
Mm.
from. Um, I was less reliant on protein powders then. So then when I switched to a full vegan diet, I started to become a little bit more um, reliant on protein powders, on
Mm.
vegan protein powders, meaning I wasn't getting as many nutrients
Mm.
and amino acids as I could through
Mm.
natural food sources. So um, I think education was huge for me. If you're going to do it, you must know what to replace things with,
Mm.
um, and to find the balance in those foods. Because at the beginning, I knew, I was like, okay, plant based protein sources must be legumes, beans, particularly, like white beans, soy products, what is it, the tempeh,
Mm.
all of that sort of thing, tofu. And I was like, okay, this is great. And then I just had extreme amounts of it.
Mm.
And at the beginning, tip number 2 is don't go full into the beans and the legumes and the things that are like slower to digest and
Mm.
process, because your body cannot
Mm.
process things in that like that much all at once. So I was like, my gas was so bad, like my stomach was bloated all the
Mm.
time. I was just, it was either like TMI, but it would either be like full on constipation for a long time, like could not go to the
Mm.
toilet, or then suddenly like my body would process it and then I could go to the toilet.
Mm.
um but I think that's because all I knew was to have beans and tofu.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
but I think it's definitely doable to grow muscle and that lean body mass on a plant-based diet. I just think that you have to keep yourself accountable with eating more and eat more frequently, because the more you do so, the more calories you can start to eat, and your body will still continue to burn it.
Yeah.
Um, and as you know, like the more lean muscle you have, the more efficient your metabolism is going to burn those calories that you're putting in.
Mm. Yeah. I think
Yeah.
the biggest mistake people make is just taking meat off the plate and then not replacing it with anything else. So that when I did track for a bit last year before my show, I probably learnt a lot about protein just within a few weeks of tracking, even though I don't track in day-to-day life. But it did kind of show you, like, if I was dining out, I went to a cafe and ordered a zucchini pesto noodles with tomato, but that's just veggies and pesto. There's no carbs, there's no fats, there's no protein. So it's not even anywhere near a complete balanced meal. But before I'd done bodybuilding, I'd be like, oh, this is such a nice thing to eat, which is nice for taste and flavor, but not for physique goals. So tracking does help with that kind of thing, even if you track for a protein goal, not for a calorie restricted thing, which can be a more positive mindset to go about it. The next question I wanted to ask you was how to shred and lose fat on a plant-based diet because it has so many carbs.
Yeah, apparently. So I guess, yeah, like you just said, like you need look at your food like a simple plate of food. Let me break it
Mm.
down for you. A really good, healthy, wholesome plate of like vegan food is you start with a base. So your base could be, like you said, quinoa. It could be rice. It could be couscous. If you're looking at including more protein, like substitutes for rice, say, could be, I know quinoa is slightly higher in protein, but then you could switch normal pasta or rice out for edamame noodles.
Yeah.
Edamame is super high in protein as well, and so doing little switches like that. So start with the base, and then on top, it's like you're going through like Subway, or you're going through like a poke bowl place, or poke bowl, whatever you say. And then you choose your, right, like you choose your protein source after that. So you've got your carbs, got your protein. Is that tofu? Is that, I don't know if you eat eggs sometimes, is it a couple eggs on top? At least it's something.
Yeah. Or the vegan
Is it
chicken and stuff.
tempeh?
Yeah.
There's vegan chicken, exactly, like sun-fed chicken. There's much more now than there was before, but in New Zealand we're still a little bit more slow with it, and it is still quite expensive.
Yeah, expensive.
So definitely, yeah, freaking it can, that part, the protein part can get expensive, but compare that to buying sirloin, right, or buying normal meat, that can also get expensive. So it's just like, what do you want to, what's your preference really? What are you, I guess, putting as priority? But then after that, like, you also want your greens, and you're looking at like green fibrous vegetables. So they're the ones that are leafy, they're the ones that are green, will give you lots of micronutrients, minerals in that. And so, and things you can get, you know, on a vegan diet as well. Like, people are like, oh, but what about calcium? But also you can get in calcium through certain vegetables. I think bok choy is one of the highest fibrous vegetables for like calcium. And
Yeah. Even
so
tofu
you've
has
got your
calcium as
your
well.
base, your, yeah, right. And so definitely like having the variety and layering. Think of the layers of your level. Layers of your meal. When you're looking for a full balanced plate of something. And when it comes to, it was weight loss, you said, right? Because of carbs.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is that I don't think it matters what diet you're on. It's just the general rule of thumb is that, like, if you're eating in a surplus of calories, as to what you were consuming, then you're going to put on weight. So like, it really doesn't matter at the end of the day, if you're looking at weight loss, about the balance of the macronutrients that you have. And I actually think that a vegan diet would be one of the easiest ones to actually consume lesser carbs in, because of the fact that a lot of your diet will consist of vegetables and foods from the ground, and um, to make it flavorsome as
Yeah.
well, to make it really good. But in any diet,
Yeah.
if you, and it just doesn't,
That's just that's just,
when people are like, oh, but there's so many carbs.
yeah.
It's so simple. It's probably the vegan diet is probably, or the plant-based diet is probably as simple and as basic as it could get. But
Yeah.
people overthink it because we've been accustomed to eating meat.
Yeah, that's just what
And
I
that's
got.
just society for you.
That's just what I got told at the start when I got my first ever weights program. They were like, "Oh, you like it's really ineffective to eat that diet because it's got so many carbs. You can never get the right body composition. All the macros are thrown out." And then that's like just been my mission this whole time, is just to prove everyone wrong because it's funny.
Yeah, it is hilarious.
Yeah.
So many carbs. Now, on a side note, my sister did say, I just thought of something funny. Go away, Zoe. She's actually calling me right now. She said, how do you, oh, I said, Zoe, where's the protein on your plate? Because mum still cooks for my sister. I was staying at home for the weekend, and she still cooks for Zoe and Dad. They eat meat. And she had the tiniest bit of like casserole meat. And I was like, where are you getting there's no protein on your plate. Come on, Zoe, like, you're gymming now, you're into this, like, I want you to make quality muscle, and so does she. But you must have, you must have protein. And she goes, there's no protein in meat. And I was like, where are you learning from? Who told you this?
Yeah.
There's no protein in meat. So I think there's so much that goes around, and so much
Yeah.
education to do still
Yeah.
around this. Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, the end of the day comes to being in a calorie deficit. But I was gonna say, like my nutrition studies were focused on the blue zones, which I'll do a whole nother video. It's like the places around the world where people live to 100 years or older with the least amount of degenerative disease. I say that sentence to so many people. It's like, and you will not find
No, I know what you're talking
you will
about.
not
Yeah.
find an overweight person there, and their whole diet is full of plants. They live on rocky terrain. They don't go to the gym necessarily, but they're active in day to day life doing gardening. They've got a big sense of community, which contributes to the longevity and stuff. But when you're eating plants, like you can get, yeah, unhealthy vegans who are eating a lot of junk food and stuff like that and not being active. But a plant based diet, you pretty much can't be overweight because you get so full because it's so dense and nourishing and so high in fiber that you naturally consume less calories. So it's the easiest diet to lose weight compared to anything else, I reckon.
Mm,
Mm.
definitely. And it's like it does fill you up faster. And I know, um, well, that's the thing. Like when you go back to whole natural food sources, say if you take for example like one singular orange, right? You eat that orange and you're having all the fiber and everything that's in that, and it makes you feel like you can be quite satisfied and satiated after eating that orange. So that's one with all its juice and all its pulp and everything. Put that into an orange juice, you
Mm.
blend that up, you're consuming, so which is like what you know people on
Mm.
a non on a processed, let's say, call it for
Mm.
this, a processed diet, um they'll be having an orange juice thinking it's healthy, whereas all the nutrients basically and the fiber is stripped out of it.
Mm.
You're technically going to have a lot more freaking calories in that one glass, in that one cup, because of the fact that in order to make the same amount, you're going to have about 6 7
Mm.
oranges in that small glass.
Yeah, a huge spike in blood
um
sugar.
Absolutely, yeah, for sure. And the blue zones, it's like it's going back to like the, I guess, Paleolithic
Mm.
diets and stuff like that, before we as humans could actually like process
Mm.
or like learn to process meats and consume dairy products and stuff like that. And there's a reason why there are documentaries on going on a plant-based diet to reverse cardiac conditions or like heart
Mm.
conditions and diabetes.
Cancer.
To it helps absolutely cancer to it does, like you said, increase like the longevity of anyone's
Mm.
life, really, if you're going back to basics.
Mm. The next question I wanted to ask you, pretty much coming off that, was what inspired you to try out a plant based diet? So, was it those reasons, or was it the animals or the planet or something else?
Do you know what? This is a question that I still think about it every single day.
Mm.
In all honesty, I this is going to sound ridiculous, and I wish I didn't say this, but I was already thinking about going vegetarian before the Game Changers
Mm.
documentary came out, and then it did, and I watched it because I was, again, out of curiosity. My mum was, I think, an influence on me transitioning a lot easier over to a vegetarian diet, because she had kind of been already eating that way for over a year. She doesn't like. She has a fear of getting sick, so that's
Mm.
where her fear of, she didn't like to prep or touch meat, so she stopped eating meat because of that reason.
Mm.
Um, so then I was like, I'll start eating some of her vegetarian meals, and then I started to research on um, how it can help the environment with agriculture, with the, I guess, and what was happening to animals. And the more and more I researched, I was like, it's putting me off things. And I didn't even research that much before going onto it, which is why I say research is so important when it comes to replacing certain food groups. But I tried it for for that national show for IFBB, and what kept me going on this diet was the fact that I didn't like prepping meat anyway, and
Mm.
I had prepped meat for so many years. The
Mm.
repetitive diet, chopping up the chicken, freezing the chopped chicken, getting those packets out when I was ready to cook another meal. I just didn't like touching it. I didn't care. Um, So when I did well in the show and I proved to myself and I guess other people as well, that you can still grow. And it was the feeling of I wanted to I wanted to better my health. I wanted to feel fresh. I wanted to not feel gluggy. My acne was really bad from struggling to digest lactose anyway. Um, so I would always get stomach pains because I
Mm.
felt like a lot of the lactose I was consuming from cheese or milk or whatever would sit in the lining of my stomach, and then I would get these immense like stomach pains. But I stopped consuming all dairy products, and all of a sudden it starts to go away, and my energy levels spike. Um, I felt so much better, and I felt less oily and my skin was a huge thing as well. So I thought, look, if all these good things are happening from this diet, why would I want to go back to something that made me feel any less than great?
Mm.
And at the beginning I think I went into a strict vegan diet just
Yeah.
because of the fact of that. Like I wanted to prove that muscle gain side of things,
Yeah.
but then there was a time where I felt a little bit bad for being more lenient, and
Mm.
I would feel terrible for touching something that wasn't classified as vegan
Mm.
because there is that pressure that comes from it
Mm.
from other people. I allowed that to get to me a little bit,
Mm.
but once I learned the balance and that my life is, it's all about my choices and I'm allowed to do what I want. I love the lifestyle now, so I would never go back.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think it's a long-term thing for me as well, but I initially changed because of a documentary as well. The first one I ever watched was Earthlings, and that's just straight up slaughterhouses for like an hour and a half. And that was like
Oh,
ages ago. And I tried to go vegetarian for like 3 weeks and then just didn't know what to do or anything. And then just gave up. And then I watched What the Health. And even though they say like Game Changers and What the Health is over exaggerated and some of the facts they say are like a bit off and like biased, the whole point of it is still true kind of thing. And they just show, like, I've just seen so much data. Like, I went to a conference or webinar or like conference thing, and they put up this lady's health results. She was reversing her own cancer through diet alone, and she had, I think it was 80% or 90% gone, and she had done it all herself through food. So I was just seeing the results there and then from people who are having success from this kind of thing. So I made the switch because of that, and then all my digestive issues improved. I just felt so much lighter. Everything, like, I just built muscle, lost fat without even trying. Is just like a miracle. So just the benefits so far outweigh the negatives kind of thing. But the societal pressure does get hard, I guess. Like, if people feel like they can never eat anything with an inch of like milk powder or something ever again, like, it can get stressful depending on how far you take it. So finding your individual balance is definitely the key.
it was to the point for me where I had to check a box of like crackers or something because if it had like milk powder in it, I
Mm.
was like, oh, I can't touch it. Like I can't do
Mm.
it because But it was I'm like, who's telling me I can't? You
Mm.
know.
Yeah. The next question was pretty much the same. What changes did you notice after making the switch? So you said your skin cleared up after you gave up the milk, and what else did you notice?
And that I was getting like less stomach pains
Mm.
as well. Um, that is also something to do, I think, with my menstruation and
Mm.
everything. That would have a huge part to play in that side of things as well. But I think in terms of a huge thing for me is I'm huge on trying to work on like my mental health and my mental clarity. And sometimes this is why I think it's also like I've still not done one. So I got to practice what I preach. But I really highly recommend if people are having, issues with either their stomach or their skin or they can't diagnose something themselves, go and get like a food
Mm.
allergy test because you don't know what you may be sensitive to, what you can't actually digest. And when things are really like, when you can't process it properly, you should have a good balance between your good and your bad um, bacteria in your gut.
Yeah.
And when it's all thrown off and your hormones are thrown off, your mental clarity cannot be as great as it should or could be. And I think I just wanted a clear mind. I
Mm.
really, really, really like being a creative kind of, I'm a, a very go, go, go kind of person. I like to have that mental energy as well as the physical energy. And one thing that I've found from fueling my self with plants is that my brain,
Mm.
my apart from prep is very prep is just a whole nother side, like a whole nother story. But for the most of it, my brain capacity and function is so much more
Mm.
efficient than when I was feeling really groggy eating meat and dairy products. Yeah, which is
Mm.
amazing. Just the clarity.
Yeah, that is actually true because if someone's eating foods that they're allergic to or even sensitive to, for me, even like gluten, I do have it in small amounts, like if it's in crackers or the odd, oh, like I don't know, something if I'm dining out, but I just try to minimize it. Mainly just swapped out bread and pasta, like the bigger items, but even swapping out gluten, like just gives you so much more clarity if you are someone who is sensitive to it. If someone's sensitive to dairy or meat is just taking so long to digest, it does actually affect your brain clarity because your mental health and stuff is related to your gut as well. And because you're not just so bogged down and your body's not trying to process all these things, and over time, it's just getting it through your system and you can just focus so well. So I definitely noticed that as well. Mm.
Definitely, yeah. That's exactly right. And like when you take that element out of it, like you take that internal um stressful environment away from the picture, when your body doesn't have to deal with that, the energy can then go to other places that like your energy is always like your brain needs the energy first, right? And so like there's just can be so much more going to your brain, you can fire faster, your reaction time can be faster. um Again, like if you're like a spiritual person, you might be able to visualize things clearer and better. There's so much that can come into it just from eating clean and eating things that are unprocessed and
Mm.
are not highly saturated in fats and are not processed, sugar sweet and beverages. It can, in
Mm.
moderation. I absolutely think everything in moderation is healthy. um yeah,
Mm.
if you want to make a change, then you will. I believe that people don't necessarily understand the importance of it, or they don't know because they haven't tried themselves. So
Mm. For you, what was the hardest and easiest part of making the switch?
the hardest part for me was the lack of variety in my food initially, even though I was eating lots and lots of vegetables and things I wouldn't usually. I just found myself kind of just making the
Mm.
same things over and over again, which is why I was having those digestive issues. A part of the hardest thing about making the switch was being in prep and learning a vegan diet at the same time.
Mm.
All I knew was that, along with tracking, I really had to monitor how my body looked and felt by looking in the mirror, progress pictures. That's one of the best ways to tell whether you're making progress, either towards or away from your goals. Um, I knew that when I was in my like bulk still, I just had to keep taking progress pictures and analyzing kind of my body in a good way, to make sure that I was putting on weight. Because like you said, we're eating so many
Mm.
vegetables, so much fiber. It's easy to think that you're full,
Mm.
but you're not actually getting in all those calories that you
Mm.
would with like a meal that's not entirely plant based. So that was yeah, probably one of the more difficult things. The easiest was that for me personally, when I make a switch and I know, um well, it's funny that I say it and I know what I want, because I didn't necessarily know exactly why I was um starting a strict vegan diet, I mean a plant-based diet in general. But when I make a decision, I know that I'm going to stick to it. So um the easiest thing for me was making that decision, and like knowing, being confident in myself that I was going to stick by my, how do you say it, like just keep to my word, I guess,
Mm.
and hold myself accountable. And I knew if I held myself accountable and that I believed that I truly believed and I put in the effort to do well on a plant-based diet in a competition, then I would do well. And I did. And so the easiest thing for me also was having the support of my mum, who was
Mm.
already on a vegetarian diet, um, because none of my friends were. So I just, yeah, at least having that one person kind of in the house and helping me prep for things, that was definitely super handy. But yeah, obviously on the other side of things, one of the more difficult things was just letting people get to me and letting people make me feel that I was cheating on myself and that I was failing if I, had that
Mm.
cracker
Yeah.
that had milk powder in it, or yeah, that was a huge thing.
Yeah, I think I noticed that a lot when dining out because when I dine out, that's my chance to kind of have a little bit more treat food. Like if I dine out and I order avocado toast, because there's bacon and eggs or avocado toast, which is like the only things they offer. I do get better on the avocado toast still, and it's not something I do often. I have cheese like every few months. It's not something I buy for myself at home. But I'm like, you know what? I'm going to have a little bit of feta on this because simply because I like it still. And it's like a treat, but I still feel guilty. I'm like, oh my God, if people knew I was having this, it's like I'm going to get bullied and it's like really bad. But as you said earlier in the podcast, like it is your life and your diet and your body. And if it's in alignment with you, then it's okay. So I'm not completely strict with it. And I do still like cheese. I just try to avoid it as often as I can. But if I dine out, that kind of is when I have the treat food. So if you're socializing when you're dining out, that's when they see you. So they'll be like, oh, you're not even plant based or whatever, but they're not seeing what I'm eating at home the rest of the time, kind of thing. Mm.
Exactly. People are very quick to judge, aren't they?
Yeah.
Like I'll be at home and I'll eat something that's I don't know what it might be, but then it might have a little dot of milk, which I
Yeah.
don't even actually do, but like say I have a dot
Dot.
of milk in my drink, and then someone will just shout at you, whether a friend or a bloody family member or whatever, they'll be like, "You can't eat that," and you're like, who the fuck are you to tell me what I can and can't put in my
Mm.
body? Like,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
it's such a and like you said that one time, what statistically, what is it actually that is a plant-based
Oh, yeah. Well,
diet?
in my studies that I did, it said that, well, that's just their description. They said plant based means animal products take up 10% or less of your diet. So that can mean whole food, plant-based, vegan, like all the way, or it can just be in most of the time. So I really like that course because it means like if it's, I don't know, someone can just make it work for them. If they really like to have steak during their time of month or something, they can just have it like how I have salmon a couple times a month during my time of month. Or if they are dining out, there is that little bit more flexibility so they can really make it work for them. Because I just hate rigid rules. That's the thing. I just don't like rules. I don't like people telling me what to do. And I don't like to stress out, like if there's a cracker. And also, if you're out and about and you're starving, and that one bit of food has a dot of milk powder, or like if you eat some bread, but I didn't even know that some breads have like egg white powder or something in it. But if there's nothing else and you're starving, you're feeling lightheaded and you're like freaking out because you need to get food in your stomach, I just eat it kind of thing because I don't know. But I would rather just live with a most of the time approach because that's what works for me, like works for my mental health as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I that's so important. And I think if you take it, sometimes like putting things in a very extreme context can be like quite useful. But say like it's the end of the world, everyone's like your only option is to either, you know, you've got a piece of steak that you're a vegan, you've got a piece of a meat there or whatever. I'd like to say that there's either a whole animal or it's a nice piece of ice fillet
Hmm.
steak that you've cooked on a fire. But like it's either you're going to consume that, get the iron, the nutrients, and you could potentially save your life from eating this, or you're not because you're a vegan and that's against the vegan
Mm,
guidelines. What are you going to do in that situation? You
mm.
know, you're not going to be like, I'd rather die. I would hope not. I would hope not.
Yeah,
You know, you will, because it's you do what is right
yeah.
in a situation and what makes you feel like you are heading in the right direction.
Yeah, we're not often in life or death scenarios, but sometimes I do think about what I would do in those scenarios and stuff. But like, yeah, I think just in social situations, I am a bit more lenient, especially if someone else has cooked or if I'm getting like takeaways or whatever. I just try to do my best and honor my body and what I'm craving and stuff. So it is hard when, yeah, others say like, what, you can't be eating that because I thought you were plant-based. And it's like, you haven't seen me eat all these vegan meals at home for the last few weeks because I don't dine out often and I don't buy it for my own fridge. But if you do have it every now and again, it's not like the end of the world.
Yeah. Like you said, it's what you do most of the time.
Mm,
That's what matters.
mm, yeah. My next question for you was, what are your top tips to recover after a tough workout? Because I think that recovery can be almost as important or just as important as the actual exercise. So, what are your top tips for that?
I love this question because I'm not going to lie, my recovery is shit.
Mm.
But I know why.
Mm,
And it's because I personally, I'm not going to beat around the bush. Like, I don't often prioritize my recovery and the things outside of a gym context. So for a long time it's been engraved, like it's become a habit to go train and then leave without stretching. Whereas I know
mm.
if I made it a thing, um, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna make sure that I stretch for 10 minutes after my training. At least it's heading in the right direction. Um, so I think that this is the worst question for me because I don't actually.
Yeah.
But in saying that, I think a huge part of recovery is your. I just want to, like, this is number one for me because for years I have not prioritized this and I actually am now, but it's sleep.
Mm,
Um, and people are like, oh, it's not, they don't think that it's directly to related to your repair or your recovery in terms of training, but it absolutely is the most important. The gains don't happen in the gym, the
mm,
gains happen when you're resting, when you're in a restorative state, right?
mm,
And so when you're getting that sleep and your body can like return or try and return to its state of like homeostasis where it's functioning most efficiently and your cells can regenerate and repair, um, that's when the growth happens.
mm,
If you don't get enough sleep, like say 7.5 hours, it would be like minimum probably, um, then your body is constantly working upon a state of stress. And when your body is stressed, it's not going to repair, it's not going to recover. You're going to find it difficult to grow or build lean muscle mass, to lose weight. Um, but I think sleep is huge for me. And I'm now at least, sorry, getting at least 8 hours sleep a night. And I have noticed a huge difference
mm,
in daily energy levels and just my body isn't as sore as it usually is, but that has something to do with not being in prep right now as well. Another thing is just make sure you are fueling your body. And I
mm,
think that there's this myth about having to get that protein shake in or a meal and straight after your training. And I think it's just more beneficial to look at your daily caloric intake
mm,
rather than nutrient timing is super important, but nutrient timing is not the be all and end all. Um, so when it comes to protein, look at what you're having in total in a day. I think it would make sense and be more beneficial to get in something faster if you train
mm,
on a fasted tummy, doing a weighted training. It would make sense to get food in as close as possible following that training. But you're not in a situation, or you shouldn't be in a situation when you feel like, oh my God, I've just trained and I need to run to my car to have my protein shake, otherwise my gains aren't going to happen,
Mm.
because it's not like that. So I think it's just regular, like eating small increments might be also more beneficial to
Mm.
someone um, during the day, which is why I'm not a huge fan of intermittent
Mm.
fasting or training fasted in
Mm.
general. Um, I think that when you train fasted, like just for recovery, I think it's always important, before you even start training, to have
Mm.
something in your system.
Yeah.
Just because if your body's working from a state of like deprivation, right? Um, and your goal is to build lean muscle, where is the energy coming from? And so your body's going to start breaking down and degrading your muscle stores, and which doesn't really make sense. It's not really favoring your gains in that sense. Even if it's half a banana,
Mm.
even if it's half a protein shake,
Yeah.
it's something so that your body has got that insulin or that glucose that it needs to kind of function off.
Mm. Yeah, I was just laughing before because when you said you didn't stretch, oh, I can't remember when, but I didn't even do my stretch yesterday as well. And I was having a bad day and I just made it to the gym and finished the workout and I still had to go grocery shopping and drive 40 minutes home. And I was like, should I stretch? And I'm like, nah, I just can't be bothered. So I've been
No.
like doing the lady that I live with, she is 48 and her calves are bigger than mine, even though we're not even related. So I've been like trying to
Yeah.
compete. She's actually doing the bodybuilding show with me. So that'll be her first ever show.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
cool.
So she's got bigger calves than me. So I've been trying to go really hard on the calf machine and do all these calf raises. And I just don't stretch my calves as part of my stretching. And then it got to the point like a week ago where I couldn't even straighten my leg because my calves were so tight, like they were fully knotted up and stuff. So stretching is important, and I do
Yeah.
notice, like, especially if you do take the time just to do it even for 5 or 10 minutes, it does help. And then my two main points were spread out your workout days because I've seen people just try to smash the same body part over and over, but when you're working out, you're like breaking the muscle fibers, and you need like 1 or even 2 days ideally in between before you do it again. So I don't do like the same type of body part working it out like all in a row, or even some people even do it twice in the same day because they're so desperate to grow it. But it's better to do it like have 1 or 2 days in between and then do it like halfway through the week or whatever. So spreading out your workout days. And then for me, just rest, because people are shocked that I don't go to the gym 6 or 7 times a day, 6 or 7 times a week, twice a day. I'm trying to go 5 days a week now, but yes, usually 4 or 5 days. Five since I've been more serious, but on a normal maintenance, I only go every second day. And I think because I allow myself that full on downtime, and especially if I'm going into my time of month as well, I kind of like really slow down and just do different types of exercising, like back to walking the dog. And I just started doing Pilates for something new, and that's like a whole different thing. So I'm not smashing my body every time. And also, like, remember with the women's cycle that we've got more energy and more strength at certain times of the month. And sometimes we need to draw back and honor ourselves and not be pushing ourselves to the extreme. So I think just not being strict with yourself is the main thing. Like if you are someone who goes all the time, and I don't know, I think also like if you've got to choose between a good sleep, like a good meal, a good sleep, or going to the gym, I would choose the good meal and good sleep. Like instead of staying up late, trying to cook when I'm absolutely exhausted, putting my body into more stress mode, doing a bad workout because I'm too tired anyway, I'd rather just go home, eat something nourishing, and just have an early night. And I really see the results from like honoring my body like that. So it's kind of a more lenient and holistic way by like listening to actually what you want. And then when you do have enough rest days, when you go to the gym, you can go freaking hard because your body's had all that downtime to recover and repair. So you can go way harder and actually push yourself and get better results.
That is so true.
Mm,
That is so. I like the way that you frame that as well,
mm,
because the literally last night, because my routine now, I've become like a morning trainer, and so, um, it's interesting. I've actually fallen into this pattern of training 5 days a week, and that's in a row, but again splitting up my
Mm.
body parts, and I've actually found that that's okay. And
Mm.
then I'll take 2 days off entirely, so Saturday and Sunday, and that's still something I'm trying to wrap
Mm.
my head around, because I've always been taught for
Mm.
years. My thing has been Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday rest, Thursday, Friday, Saturday rest,
Mm.
Sunday. Um, but my body it's benefiting from 5 days a week, 2 full rest days, and then I feel more switched on come Monday if I don't go out and get on the piss.
Mm.
Um, but I think that last night, actually, that's interesting that you say, like, what would you choose, like training or going, or like having a good meal, good sleep?
Yeah.
I ended up going to sleep at like 11 something last night, and it's my thing to train at 5:30 in the morning. So, and I really I kind of I started to go down that little rabbit hole of like, oh, Eden, like it's that's not very good of you if you don't go and train at 5:30 in the morning, because that's your thing. Like, I was being hard on myself, and I was like, no, I went to sleep at 11, and I've got to get up at 5, like quarter to 6 this morning. I know it's going to be better for me if I sleep longer, like if I don't
Mm.
get up even earlier to train, and if I sleep longer. And now I'm going to go to the gym this afternoon.
Mm.
Um, and I haven't done an afternoon training for about like 2 months.
Mm.
So it's a little bit weird, but it's just sometimes you've got to weigh up
Mm.
what is better in the situation. Yeah.
Mm.
Good
How
point, though.
how do you balance your training and physique goals while still managing or still maintaining a social life?
Yeah, good question. So now I can speak from, like, I guess I want to speak from my last show, because if I'm honest, I was pretty isolated
Mm.
this coming prep, and that was for other, I guess, like, it had something to do with my coach and the approach that I took as well. So the balance that I had was not a good balance, was not a healthy balance for my mental health. I'm not going to lie, for this last prep. But speaking from examples from my other shows, I think that my approach is that at the end of the day, like, everyone has their own goals, and my goal, I knew, was not to be a pro athlete. Yes, you can train and you can eat and follow everything's and think like a pro, but at the end of the day, like, it is not a life and death situation whether I go out and have a meal out with friends
Mm.
and family and enjoy myself, um, or sit at home and be really socially um, isolated, and be depressed. And so having that kind of like, I can still achieve my goals
Mm.
whilst still doing the things I love. I think that is so important, because if you don't do that and you fixating on one thing, obsessing over one thing, can sometimes be so detrimental,
Mm.
um, in so many ways. So I think you need that balance in order to keep sane,
Mm.
in order to have fun with it. Because whatever you do, you should do it for an element of fun
Mm.
and because it's exciting to you.
Mm.
So you don't want it to be a process where you actually end up hating it and you don't want to do it
Mm.
again, because that's really sad. I think my balance was allowing myself to, like, if you want to go and eat a meal off of plan and you are following a plan, go and do that. But just know that it's, if you go in, I used to go and have burger fuel once a week. And that was my thing. I was really excited for burger fuel, and then I would have burger fuel, and I would also have kumara fries, um, and steal everyone else's food as
Mm.
well. But I knew that that was my one time
Mm.
to really enjoy what I was putting in my mouth.
Mm.
And if you're gonna put it in your mouth, at least fucking enjoy it.
Yes.
That's what I say.
Yeah.
There's no point in putting something in your mouth and having that guilty conscience about it, because at the end of the day, it was your choice to put it in your mouth for you to chew it. No one forced you to swallow it. So
Mm.
if you're gonna do it, at least be happy that you are doing that and you're actually giving yourself grace and appreciation. Because if you're being consistent, most of the time, then you are more than allowed to eat something a little bit different.
Mm. Yeah, burgers are probably my favorite takeaway, like burger or some kind of Italian pizza is definitely my go-to.
Yeah. I've never been a huge fan of Italian. I
Mm.
wish I was, but I don't know what it is. Just I reckon burgers, pizza.
Yeah.
Oh.
The second to last question is, do you have to go 100% vegan to see results, and how did you find your personal balance with it? Because when I asked Eden to do the interview, I was like, yeah, let's talk about vegan bikini prep, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, just so you know, I'm no longer plant-based. I eat fish now. And I'm like, so do I. That's fine. Let's talk about it.
So true.
Yeah.
I eat fish though. I'm a failure.
Yeah.
No. Um yeah, that balance. I think, like I mentioned before, I was pretty handy into the veganism, into the vegan diet at the beginning, but since then I have allowed myself to kind of figure out my own style. I guess some people called it, like, because I actually put a poll up on my Instagram and I was like, what would you call this diet
Mm.
that I'm on? And the term diet, I don't see it as a negative term
Yeah.
unless you make it a negative
Just a
term.
way of eating.
Um, but I'm like, yeah, a way of eating, a lifestyle. And so I'm like, what would you? I was curious, what would you call this? Some people were calling what I was eating
Mm.
pescatarian. Some were like, that's just vegetarian. Others said it was vegan, and so it's a mix of everything. And I find that I never even liked seafood before I went vegan, but as soon as I started going vegan, I started craving prawns, which
Yeah.
was so weird.
Yeah.
So there was something in it that I was like, but maybe it wasn't the prawn itself, maybe it was the nutrients that it was
Mm.
giving me. So I was like, I'd been thinking of including fish into my or seafood into my diet for quite some time, and now that I do, I really enjoy it on the occasion. I'm
Mm.
not gonna lie, like I still have tofu. Tofu is my go-to most meals.
Mm.
I still don't have any dairy products, as in milk. I don't have. I'm like, what's another dairy product? Cheese.
Mm.
I
Cream.
don't. I don't.
Yeah.
I just don't feel like I right? Like cream. Sometimes a little bit of like this is barely ever though. Sometimes some sour cream, but it's not
Mm.
because I'm being hard on myself. It's because I genuinely just don't care. I
Mm.
don't care for it anymore.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, and I think that I look at animals now, I think this is the most beautiful thing. I like when I'm traveling and I'm in the countryside and I look out to the cows and the
Mm.
sheep and all the animals that every single time I see little baby calves or a cow, I'm like, I don't eat you anymore.
Mm.
Like, I'm so happy.
Yeah. That's so good. It was
So it's that, yeah.
I was gonna say it's interesting because we got a little calf at our house at the moment, and then, well, the lady got it to be a friend to the horse and stuff as well, so that the horse has a friend, but it was a little baby calf, only a week old or something, and then we got it off the trailer, and then we're hand feeding it, so I do it 3 times a week while she goes to Pilates. I wake up in the morning and go out and feed the calf, and the girl who used to live here, she's moved out now, but she was like, "Oh, it's kinda made me think twice about my dinner last night because she bought takeaways that had beef in it." So she's like eating the calf. And then when you actually see the animal in person and like interact with it and go and pet it and like while you're outside in the grass and stuff, you're like kind of putting two and two together. So it is a good feeling. Um, but it's kind of hard. I always come back to the same argument in my head, and I'm like, if I eat salmon around my time of month, then I'm like a hypocrite because then why is the cow more important than the fish? Because it should all be equal. But I think your health comes first still, and if it's something that I crave, there's a reason why. And every time I do eat salmon, which I do save it for a treat and like try not to have it much, but when I do eat it, it does feel like it satisfies my hormones or whatever it is that I'm craving, and then I'm good for like another few weeks or whatever. So I think your health does come first, but sometimes there are certain nutrients in certain ingredients that we will still crave, and that's the one thing I still have, as well as like eggs just from my backyard, only from my chickens, but I don't buy them from the supermarket. So if someone wants to eat that, they can find like find them at certain markets, or even when I lived in Auckland, I would go on this little drive out into the countryside and people just sell their eggs on the side of the road kind of thing. So you can do things like that to get actual backyard eggs that like still aren't from the supermarket. So it's still about making it work for you. But I always do come back to that. I'm like, oh my God, people are going to judge me for eating salmon, even though it's my favorite food. But I do try to be transparent online and share things that I'm eating. Like last night, I shared my grocery haul and I have non-vegan chocolate, but I still put it in there just to show, like, hey, I'm not perfect. This is my grocery shop. And it's like, there's only one thing in there that's not vegan. So it's still like 99% or 95% or whatever. But I do try to be transparent online if there's other people who might be going through the same kind of arguments and stuff.
Mm-hmm. And like that's so true because like these arguments come from a perspective like if you made that perspective or mindset switch where it's like okay you maybe you might have to if it's still an internal like thing that you an internal conflict that's repeating in your mind all the time, maybe you might have to go and write down all the amazing good incredible things that you are doing, it, that is in regards to this lifestyle, who you're helping,
Mm,
what good is coming from it, and where you're heading with it. Um, and then also on the other side of the paper, then it's like, okay, well, what are the so-called bad things that I am doing,
mm,
and who is actually telling me that it is bad? Is it myself, or is it from external validation, external pressures? So we're so fast, we're so quick to judge ourselves and to bring up the terrible things that we are doing, or the things that we think are so bad, rather than giving ourselves credit first and foremost for all the incredible things that we are.
mm,
So it's a constant
mm,
reminder. It's a mind game, and it just comes from practicing like gratitude from yourself, which I'm sure you do a lot of the time anyway.
mm,
But I can completely resonate with that
mm,
feeling and that thought. It's like, why is one better than the other? But then I guess at the end of the day it comes back to, if you have that, if and you're smart enough to know whether you're lying to yourself about actually having a craving for it
mm,
or not. If you feel that craving, and if you feel like your body thrives off of it,
mm.
then it's like fucking great, do it. Like there's a thing called the circle of life
Mm,
for a
mm,
reason. Like
yeah,
animals do it to animals,
yeah,
and we are mammals, right?
yeah. There is another way to look at it as well. Like I do eat salmon because it's my favorite food, but also I started noticing once when I was going to cafes, every time I'd go out for brunch, I'm like, I need a beetroot juice. I don't know why. I don't like actually eating beetroot, but I just need to drink beetroot juice every time I went out. And I Googled it and it's very, very high in iron. So maybe instead of having a steak, my body maybe because I don't actually want to eat a steak. Maybe because it's more dense compared to fish, kind of thing, like harder to break down and stuff. But I do crave things like that. So you can look at it from a vegan perspective. If someone doesn't want to eat animal products at all, and if they are having those cravings, maybe look into supplementing the kind of nutrient that food has, like supplementing like a plant mixed plant omega, or for me, it's like beetroot juice and making sure I'm eating more dark leafy greens and having more iron rich foods. So you can look at it from that perspective as well without having to eat the food. But if you are having cravings, like I've read in some forums and stuff that some vegans also start having dreams about meat. And I think that has happened to me maybe 3 times in my life. I've had I've had a dream about steak and I'm like, okay, that's not a good sign. So what can I do to make my plate more nourishing? Because I still don't want to eat the steak.
I have
Yeah.
not.
But I think if people aren't eating
That's
balanced
so
meals,
interesting.
yeah, it was more when I was going through the periods when I wasn't eating enough food. So I probably was low. So I'd be like, okay, get an iron supplement, making sure I'm eating enough bulk foods and enough whole
Yeah,
foods. And then the other thing I was going to say was with the diet
that's
definitions.
yeah.
Yeah, so I say plant-based means animal products take up 10% or less of your diet, but I follow this other dietitian who calls it like a plant-forward diet, and she still eats chicken sometimes and has some dairy, but she eats a lot of tofu for her lunches and has a lot of plant-based meals. So she's like plant forward, or it can be flexitarian. And I think how we eat is like maybe halfway
That's
between
another one.
plant-based and halfway between Mediterranean. Oh, yeah, Mediterranean. Because Mediterranean, they have like more dairy than I would recommend or anything as well, but they do have a little bit of fish, but a high focus on salad and veggies
Yeah.
and grains and plant food. So it's kind of a mix between all those, but it doesn't, yeah, you don't have to get caught up in the specifics. I just call it plant-based because it's like based around plants.
It is.
Mm,
It is. It's in the name, right? Yeah,
mm.
it's based around plants. And so, like, whatever you want to make out of that,
Yeah,
like, I'm like, go make your own definition,
yeah.
rewrite it. Like, it doesn't matter. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's how you do it.
And the only other question I had to ask you is what is it really like to do a bikini bodybuilding prep? Like, what's all the behind the scenes of what it's truly like?
Oh, what is it
Mm.
like? In a few words, it's gosh, intense.
Mm.
Um, it I mean, look, I did it for 4 years because I fucking loved it, and so I think that it is one of the most rewarding things that you could ever probably put yourself through.
Mm.
Um, the prep itself, it again depends on the person, but you kind of do have to expect coming into a prep that your life is going to be a little bit more regimented or like structured
Mm.
than it may normally be. During a prep, I would have a client probably in a prep for nowhere nowhere less. Sorry, I'm getting hungry, so I'm like,
Mm.
um, like, like, but like a 10-week prep
Mm.
would be like a minimum that I would put a client through or myself through, which is why I'm like, when you said you did a 6-week prep, I was like, holy
I
shit, like
know.
that's crazy to me. Um, I know it was mental, but I think the longer that you can kind of stretch out a prep, which is when you're like getting leaner, getting your shred kind of stage. I think that I've noticed that the longer my preps, the it makes it such it's way more enjoyable, way more comfortable. You have time to play around with it. So I've taken a different approach every single prep when I was coaching myself. And I think that one of my favorite preps that I had for myself was actually just reverse dieting
Mm.
into one of my shows. So I was fully aware with how my body functioned. And so I knew that if I came in a little bit leaner, a little bit sooner, then I could flip that on its head,
Mm.
reverse it, start feeding my body with more calories. My body's going to thrive, love it more, and I reversed into prep for about 5 weeks or so, and I um, got very lean.
Wow.
So I loved it. Yeah. Whereas I've definitely done it like your more standard traditional way of like just deficiting into a show and having your refeeds here and there. I believe that like prep is fun, especially if you have a really good coach that knows what they're doing and really does listen and take into consideration what you want as an athlete and who you are and what you believe in. um, I think if you get a really good coach and you know each other really well and you have that good relationship, it's an amazing process. And seeing your body change week by week at the beginning, sometimes you go through that a little cycle of being like, oh, I'm not changing though, but that's only because the leaner you get, the harder it is to obviously see slight changes. So when you look back at when you started versus when you step on stage, the transformation is bloody
Mm.
insane. Um, and I love the community, the culture. It's the fact that um, I think about, I'm not gonna lie, like a part of it for me, as well as that community aspect, it's being acknowledged in the federation that I compete in, because ICN, they look after you like a
Mm.
family and they know each competitor. And so they look after me as a competitor, um, through social media or when I'm at the show. They will always be there for you, always have your back. And yeah, I just think at the end of the day, so I mean, I'm going to end this on a note that's basically with saying And I don't know if I actually mentioned this to you. I may have, but I've actually just decided to not compete anymore.
Wow.
So that did I
No, you didn't say
did I
that.
say I didn't tell you that? Did I? No. So there you go. I have finished competing.
Mm.
um, because yeah, which is interesting because that's what this podcast was about. But at the end of the day, I wanted to do it for a challenge, and I have
Mm.
proved to myself the things that I wanted to prove when I competed. I know I have the discipline and the right morals to be able to do well in this industry, in this sport.
Mm.
Um, and for now, I want to take my attention away from my from being judged in an aesthetically based sport.
Mm.
Even though you've got to you've got to be happy with how you look up on stage, regardless of the judges' criteria.
Yeah.
I always say that because your journey is still amazing and credible. Um, but yeah, I now want to try something that is
Mm.
based on recovery
Mm.
and performance rather than aesthetics.
Yeah. That's so
So
interesting.
I get to eat more food, I get
Mm.
to put on some muscle.
Oh, are you gonna do powerlifting or something?
I was thinking maybe CrossFit, but I just want to
Oh. Yeah.
get yes, so we're switching it up.
Mm. Well, the in
I love being competitive.
yeah. The interview that goes live before our episode was actually with an accredited sports nutritionist who also does CrossFit, so you'll get some good tips from that one as well.
Ooh,
Yeah.
amazing. That's exciting. Perfect
Yeah,
timing.
perfect timing.
That's awesome because I think that perfect timing. I think that obviously bodybuilding and plant
Yeah.
based, they do go hand in hand together. Plant based diet can go hand in hand with anything.
Yeah.
Um, but again, it's gonna be a whole new way of looking at nutrition because I know you have to eat an
Mm.
incredible amount to fuel your body for that high capacity training, which you
Yeah.
probably talked about. So again,
Mm.
it's gonna be about finding um, new ways of introducing
Mm.
new different plant-based recipes and meals and stuff like that for a different type of training, which I'm
Mm.
excited for.
Yeah, that's so interesting to hear because if you've been doing bodybuilding 4 years, I've only done one show, so I'm, like, at the start of my whole journey. Mm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And like and obviously you start to understand like what works for
Yeah.
you and how much to eat at certain times of your in your journey and
Mm.
stuff like that. So because you do go through that bulk and then that cut,
Mm.
whereas CrossFit I guess is a constant,
Mm.
like I guess it's much more continuous,
Mm.
and then you can do comps whenever you want, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds so good though. Mm.
Yeah, and then obviously,
Cool.
like, we can become a hybrid. I just love to call myself a hybrid athlete. I think
Yeah.
that'd be fucking great.
Mm. That sounds so good. Was there anything else?
Hybrid plant, hybrid plant
Yeah.
based.
Was there anything else you wanted to add before we finish up as well?
I think we covered a lot, which was honestly, thank you so much. This was a wonderful conversation. We have, as I can't believe how long we have chat.
I
But
know.
like honestly, at the end of the day, I just think that like it's been so good. But people just have to take a step away from, I guess, just like think of yourself and what you want to truly take time as an individual to figure out where you want to get to and the processes that may help you get to that place in your life. And so in regards to plant-based, like if you want to feel better and if you want to try a new way of living to see if you like it, the biggest thing is you don't know until you
Mm.
try. I personally didn't know that I was going to be plant based still, and it's been
Mm.
years. I don't know exactly when I went plant based, but I guess, yeah, you don't know until you
Mm.
try. So just do the research, talk to like minded
Mm.
people. Having this chat with you has been really eye
Mm.
opening, it's been amazing. And it makes me really proud to be a part of a community that is just so uplifting. And yeah, I think it's great.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'll put all the links for Eden's social media and stuff below. Did you want me to include your podcast as well from the episode you did do?
Absolutely. Yep, you can chuck that in there.
Mhm.
Yeah, FYI, I will be getting back on the
Yeah,
mic soon. It's just a matter of like, um,
time.
feeling like when I'm ready to jump back on it.
Mm,
Exactly, I'll know when.
yeah.
So, um, got some really big, exciting plans coming
Mm,
up. I do have a big launch
mm,
coming up within the next month or so. So, yes, very excited for that. I think people can kind of anticipate or know kind of what it may be, but it does kind of include your fitness slash
mm,
meal nutrition side of things, plus the mindfulness, mindset, mental health
mm,
side of things as well. So yeah, that's going to be all happening within the next couple months. So
mm,
um, I'll be able to jump back on the podcast around that time as well.
Sounds awesome. Cool. Well, thank you for listening, everyone. Stay tuned for next week and subscribe if you want to see more kind of topics around nutrition and wellness and plant-based stuff and holistic health. So, yeah, thank you for listening, and I'll see you next week.